to this podcast, the Heidelcast.
It's a Heidelminicast. And now, Scott Clark.
In today's episode, a call about Heidelberg and a question about where to begin studying covenant theology.
If the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? Please make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link or by sending a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027.
You know, you really should subscribe to the Heidelcast in any podcast app, and you should also download the Heidel app. And it's available anywhere apps are available, namely the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store.
The Heidelcast.
Gracious, hello.
Hello, Heidel phone, Dr. Clark, the deep, scary voice, and everyone else that works at the Heidelcast. I am calling with two questions that are related to Heidelberg. So the first question is, I'm going to be taking my family to Germany next year, and we're going to go to the town of Heidelberg. And my question for Dr. Clark was, can you tell me, is there anything historically significant that I should see concerning the Heidelberg Catechism or the influences that led to its production while we're in the town? The other question I have has to do with the Heidelberg logo. There's a church building on the logo, and I was wondering if you could tell me the significance of the building and the logo. That's all I got. Have a great day. God bless.
Well, anonymous caller, I just want to interrupt here and say thank you for remembering the voice. You know, I labor away here in the recording studio, and everyone just sort of takes me for granted. But you didn't. Thank you.
The best podcast, the Heidelcast.
He's such a weirdo. So needy. Well, okay. Weird and unexpected, but interesting question. Thank you for calling 760-618-1563. Notice that the voice could have given you that number, but he didn't. Just sort of narcissistic, I guess. And I have to turn his mic off so he can't talk back. Okay, so where to go in Heidelberg if you're visiting? Well, maybe the most important places. I thought of 6 places you could visit. I'm sure there are others. I have only been there briefly. I was on a tour, and we stopped in Heidelberg on a rainy day. I don't remember what day of the week it was, and we were there for maybe 4 hours or something, and I was literally running through the streets of Heidelberg, the old city anyway. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. So I hope you have time to visit. I am looking forward to going back here in a few years and spending more time. We don't know how long, but more time, days, maybe a week or so. So these are the places that I would go visit. The Schloss, the castle, is one place. Now, I don't know if these are in particular order, but the castle is pretty important to the Heidelberg Catechism since it was Frederick who commissioned it. It's, to me, a kind of a wreck in a way, as a building, these buildings, some of these castles, they would add things on sort of ad hoc, and it's interesting, definitely worth seeing, especially if you haven't seen a lot of medieval or early modern castles. And then Holy Spirit Church, Heilige Geistkirche, is the church building. That's the building that we used in the logo for the Heidelblog. That was the second question that he asked, is what is the building? That's the Holy Spirit Church, which is closely associated with the Heidelberg Catechism. And when I was there in 2000, so a long time ago, there was a glass case in the foyer, or the narthex, and in it was a first edition, if memory serves, a German language edition of the Heidelberg Catechism. There wasn't much else there relative to the Catechism, but there was that in 2000. And then if you are on the street, so at the base of the castle, and you'll see a white building, sort of gingerbread-looking building, and there's a technical name for that style, and it's escaping me right now. And if you know what it is, leave a comment. By the way, if you're thinking of things that I don't mention, in this episode that our caller should see while he's in Heidelberg, then go to heidelblog.net when this appears and leave a comment. And that way we'll all know where we should visit. You can also see, I think it's called the Heidelberger Akademie der Wissenschaften. I know Wissenschaften's in the name, and it was originally the Collegium Sapientiae, and before that it was a monastery. And that is where the Heidelberg Catechism was actually written. That is, where the seminary was, where the ministerial students studied. They also studied in the university as well. And that's where Ursinus's office was. And I think that's where Olivianus's office was, but I don't know. But I know Ursinus had an office up there, or a study, and that's where he did his work on the catechism and other things up there. So that will be worth seeing, and you won't have any trouble finding that. It's a famous building, and if you look at pictures of Heidelberg, you'll see that right at the base of the castle. You also want to see Philosopher's Walk. That's a famous place in Heidelberg. Nothing to do with the catechism, but just a famous place in Heidelberg. It's a beautiful place, lots of things to see, and I'm sure I'm missing things. So again, heidelblog.net, leave a comment when this posts, and you can, listener, instruct us as to other things that the caller and I, when I get to go again, should visit, and others as well. I intend to go to see Neustadt. Now, there are several Neustadts, but this is the one nearest Heidelberg. That is where Ursinus and others, Zenke, I think, and there were others, went to form the Casmerianum when they were exiled from Heidelberg in 1576 at the death of Frederick III, and then Olivianus and others went north to Herborn, Herborn, and that is a place that I intend to visit. I didn't get to go in 2000. In the church there is where Olivianus is buried, or buried, depending on where you're from. I really don't remember the correct pronunciation. I don't know if we agree as to what the correct pronunciation is. I've used both, buried and buried. I was raised with buried, and then my wife convinced me to say buried. I don't know anymore what I should say. But anyway, he is interred, which isn't technically correct because that would be in the earth, but in the choir is where his body was placed after he died. So those are the places that I would go see in Heidelberg.
Call or text now, 760-618-1563.
All right, and we have here, as I reach in to the coffer, an email.
You got some letters.
Thank you, Mick, or Sir Mick. And it's from Jordan, and he says, "Hello, Dr. Clark. I have recently found out about you." Uh-oh. I guess it's okay. From a friend, and your articles and podcasts have been very helpful. I am new to the URCNA. That stands for the United Reformed Churches in North America, and that's the Federation of Churches in which I am a minister. I am an associate minister at Escondido United Reformed Church, and then they've called me to teach at the seminary. So that's how that works. Anyway, so that's why he mentioned that. Somewhat new to the Reformed faith. By Reformed, I mean covenant theology, view of the church, etc. I've always believed in predestination. My question is, what should someone new to the Reformed faith, like me, begin studying? Thank you so much for taking the time to read this. Oh, I'm happy to do it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for writing. Okay, Jordan, the first thing you should do is go to heidelblog.net. And from there, just click on the About link and click on Resources, Heidelblog Resources. And then, just as I'm doing now, scroll down, and number 12 on the resource list is resources for those beginning to study covenant theology. And on that resource page, you'll find at the top there a brief history, popular history that I wrote some years ago, brief history of covenant theology. That'd be a good place to start, just to get oriented. And then there's a series of reading recommendations there. And if you're just getting started, then I would do it in this order. And there's probably some other things I should add. I know there's one that just came out besides Harrison Perkins. It's not coming to me right now. So I'll think of it when the episode is over, but I can't think of it right now. We're blessed with a number of good introductions now. But to start with Mike Brown and Zach Keel, Sacred Bond, Covenant Theology Explored. And this is a really fine, basic introduction to covenant theology. I recommend it very strongly, and I have it linked here to their Amazon page. You might be able to get it elsewhere, too. Maybe you can get it through heritagebooks.org. I don't know that for a fact, and I don't want to try to figure that out while I'm talking with you. That seems rude, just to start surfing around while we're talking. Then after that, read Mike Horton's book, Introducing Covenant Theology. And this is just such a helpful book, and I'm so glad this exists. And again, I don't know where it's linked to here. Again, Amazon. So there was a time when I was trying not to link to Amazon because they were banning books, but then they seem to have backed away. And I mean, they weren't just banning books. I mean, obviously there are some books that should be banned, pornography and that sort of thing, but they were banning, perfectly reasonable books. There was a book critiquing the trans movement, or maybe a couple, one by, I think it's Abigail Schreier, which I still haven't read yet. It's on my list. It's actually stacked up on top of the bookshelf right now. I've got two of them. When Harry Became Sally, by Anderson, I can't think of his first name right now, and then Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage. Those two are on my stack of books to read. Anyway, they had banned one or both of those, and so I was telling people to get their books elsewhere, but they seem to have backed away from that stance. And then after that, I would recommend Harrison Perkins' Reformed Covenant Theology, A Systematic Introduction. And it's an amazing volume. Harrison is a wonderful writer. He's a board member at the Heidelberg Reformation Association and an experienced seminary professor, and he is a wonderful pastor in the Detroit metro in an Orthodox Presbyterian congregation, Oakland Hills Community Church in the Detroit metro. Highly recommended. And then after that, I would start reading, primary sources. Now, there's lots of secondary lit that you could read. There are things to avoid, errors to avoid, like the federal vision. That's something you'd want to avoid. The new perspective on Paul, that's a thing you would want to avoid. And there are resource pages on those issues at heidelblog.net/resources. Just scroll down, and they're organized alphabetically, and those will help you to get oriented. But as for primary sources, we're doing, for example, in our Covenant Theology series on the Heidelcast, which I guess I should mention, right? Heidelcast.org or heidelblog.net/comfort, the comfort of the covenant. We have multiple episodes released in that series, and that would be a good, or I hope anyway, a useful orientation to the basic issues, basic topics, basic vocabulary, ways of thinking, definitions, all of those things in Reformed covenant theology. But as far as sources, one of my favorite is, in terms of classic Reformed sources and covenant theology, is Herman Witzius, Economy of the Covenants. So once you've read those basic introductory texts and more advanced introductory texts, so Brown and Keel being the most basic, Horton being a little more advanced, and then I think Harrison Perkins being perhaps the most advanced of those, read Witzius, Economy of the Covenants, and that is in English, 2 volumes, at least as I have it. I have an old reprint from, more than 30 years ago. Kind of an ugly reprint, but it's serviceable, and it was in 2 volumes, and I think that's typically how it comes, and I think you can get it through Reformation Heritage Books at heritagebooks.org.
Heidelcast.
The Heidelcast.
And there are other primary sources that you could read. One sort of difficult way, I guess, in a way, but also very rewarding, would be to read John Owen's commentary on the book of Hebrews. But maybe you don't have to read the whole thing. There is an introductory volume to the commentary on Hebrews that people tend to overlook, where he lays out his covenant theology, which, by the way, and I've written about this, and I think I probably talked about it on some Heidelcast episode or other, my Baptist friends would do well to read that volume before they go to his comments on Hebrews 8, because they tend to misunderstand what he's saying on Hebrews 8, in part because I think they read their own reading of redemptive history back into Owen, and because they ignore that first volume where he lays out how he understands the history of redemption. So that's edifying as well. Robert Rollick I have found helpful. And then, of course, you could read Olivianus's Firm Foundation, which is, early text, but very edifying, and then his exposition of the Apostles' Creed. So there's lots of things. And then, of course, there are sort of systematic volumes where there are treatments of the covenants of works and grace and the covenant of redemption. There's a section in Turretin in his Elenctics, Institutes of Elenctic Theology, where he deals with, or sections where he deals with covenant theology, and that's very helpful, particularly his treatment of the covenant of grace, very edifying and very helpful. So we have an abundance of sources. William Ames's Marrow of Theology is, I think, very edifying, very helpful, and lots of other texts. If you look at the Classic Reformed Theology series, we have Heidegger's Concise Marrow, which has a lot to say. It's a small volume, but he spends a significant proportion of the volume discussing topics in covenant theology, particularly the covenant of works, which I didn't expect. I looked at Heidegger in Latin a little bit, but I had not obviously read the whole thing, and until we had sat down to do the translation, where I began looking at it, more in earnest, and I was delighted to see how much time he spent on the covenant of works. I'm quite impressed with that, actually. Didn't expect that. And then there is Coxeus, his famous book on the doctrine of the covenant or testament of God, the first ever English translation. So, and I don't know, did I mention Caspar Olivianus's exposition of the Apostles' Creed? Anyway, that would be also valuable. But so lots of good secondary literature and lots of good primary literature. And there's many other articles under the resources section on the Heidelblog, heidelblog.net/resources. There's a resource page on conditions in the covenant of grace. That might be helpful, where I try to lay out the distinctions between antecedent conditions, that is basically the covenant of works that Christ has fulfilled for us, and consequent conditions, basically the third use of the law. What are the consequences for being in Christ, for being in the covenant of grace? How ought we to live out of gratitude in the covenant of grace, in union with Christ, according to the moral law of God? So lots of stuff there, and I think that will, at least I hope, that will get you going.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by Heidelberg Reformation Association.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidel Media production.
The best podcast, the Heidelcast.